A girl covered in grease walked up to a broken Rolls-Royce. "I can fix this," she said quietly. The Millionaire CEO burst out laughing, but when she opened the hood, his smile vanished forever. The Rolls-Royce Phantom was dead in the middle of Woodward Avenue, blocking traffic during Detroit's evening rush hour. Riley Thompson had been walking home from Tony's auto repair, where she'd spent the afternoon cleaning tools in exchange for Mr. Tony teaching her about engines, when she heard the honking. Dozens of cars trapped behind the luxury vehicle, drivers shouting, everyone angry. Then she saw him. A man in a suit that probably cost more than her mom made in 3 months stepped out of the Rolls-Royce, phone pressed to his ear, radiating the kind of fury that came from never being inconvenienced. "I don't care what you're doing," he snapped into the phone. "Send a flatbed truck now. I'm not standing on a street corner like some—" He noticed Riley standing there, staring. "What are you looking at, kid?" Riley was 12, small for her age, wearing her dad's old mechanic jacket that hung past her knees. Her hands were permanently stained with grease that no amount of scrubbing could remove. She knew what the man saw. A poor kid from the East Side who didn't belong anywhere near a car worth $500,000. "Your car," Riley said simply. "It's not starting." The man, tall, silver-haired, with the kind of face that looked like it had never smiled at anything that didn't make him money, let out a short, harsh laugh. "Brilliant observation. Yes, my car isn't starting. That's why I'm calling a tow truck instead of driving it." His voice dripped with condescension. "Now, unless you have a spare Rolls-Royce engine in your pocket, I suggest you move along." Riley stepped closer, ignoring the man's dismissive tone. She could see exhaust vapor, hear the starter clicking uselessly. "Can I look? Can you?" The man stared at her like she'd asked to perform surgery. "This is a custom Phantom. It's worth more than your entire neighborhood. I'm not letting some street kid poke around under the hood." "I'm not some street kid," Riley said, her voice quiet but firm. "I'm a mechanic. Well, I'm learning, but I know engines." The man looked at her, really looked, and Riley saw the exact moment he decided she wasn't worth his time. "Sure you do. Now get lost before I call the police." Behind them, the honking intensified. Someone shouted out their window. The man's face reddened. "Sir," Riley tried again, "I can fix this. I really can." "You?" The man laughed again, louder this time. Several people in nearby cars turned to watch. "You're what, 10 years old? Covered in grease like you've been rolling in a junkyard? And you think you can fix a car that my personal mechanic, who charges $300 an hour, can't keep running?" 12, Riley corrected. "I'm 12. And yes, I think I can fix it." The man pulled out his wallet, extracted a $20 bill and held it out to Riley like she was a stray dog. "Here, take this, buy yourself dinner, and leave me alone." Riley didn't take the money. Instead, she walked to the front of the Rolls-Royce and knelt down, looking underneath. "Hey!" The man stalked toward her. "I told you to. Your fuel pump relay is fine," Riley called out, still examining the undercarriage. "So it's not a fuel delivery problem. And I can hear the starter engaging, so it's not the battery or alternator." The man stopped. "How do you—" "My dad taught me." Riley stood up, wiping her hands on her jacket. The words hurt to say. Past tense, taught. Because her dad was gone. Had been gone for 14 months, and sometimes Riley still forgot and thought about showing him something new she'd learned. She pushed the grief down and focused on the car. "Can you pop the hood?" "Absolutely not. Then you'll be stuck here until the tow truck arrives." Riley shrugged. "Which, in this traffic, will probably take an hour, maybe more." "And all these people," she gestured to the growing line of cars, the drivers getting angrier, "they're all going to remember the guy in the expensive car who was too proud to accept help from a kid." The man's jaw clenched. He looked at his phone, at the traffic, at Riley, at the crowd of people now watching this interaction with interest. "Fine," he snapped. "You have 2 minutes. Then I'm calling the police to have you removed for vandalism or trespassing or whatever charge applies to touching other people's property." He reached into the car and pulled the hood release. Riley lifted the hood. It was heavy, built like a tank, and looked at the engine bay. The Phantom's V12 was beautiful, pristine, clearly maintained by someone who knew what they were doing. But Riley wasn't looking at the obvious parts. "This isn't a standard Phantom," she said, more to herself than to the man. This engine's been modified. The intake manifold, the ignition timing system. She paused, leaning closer. Wait, this design is… Her breath caught. She'd seen this modification before, in her father's notebooks. The ones he'd filled with engine designs and innovations, the ones he'd worked on late at night at their kitchen table, while Riley sat across from him, watching, learning, absorbing everything he taught her about how machines worked. The Stirling hybrid system, Riley whispered. The man went very still. What did you say? Riley's hands were shaking now, but she kept examining the engine. This is a hybrid system retrofit. Custom ignition sequencing with a capacitor bank for regenerative something. She couldn't remember the exact term her father had used, but she knew the concept. It's supposed to improve efficiency by almost 40%. But the ignition module… She found it, tucked behind the engine block. It's mounted wrong. The heat from the exhaust is cooking it. That's why you're getting intermittent failures. How do you know about Stirling hybrid? The man's voice had changed. No longer condescending. Now it was sharp, almost dangerous. Riley didn't answer. She was looking at the ignition module, at the way it was positioned, at the custom bracket that was clearly an afterthought rather than part of the original design. I need to relocate this, she said. Move it 6 inches forward, add a heat shield. The car will start fine then. You're not touching anything else, the man said, but he didn't sound as certain now. Then you'll be stuck here. Riley met his eyes. Your call. The man stared at her for a long moment. Then, incredibly, he nodded. You break anything, I'm suing your parents for everything they have. My mom works 2 jobs just to pay rent, Riley said flatly. We don't have anything for you to take, except maybe my dad's tools. But those aren't for sale. She didn't wait for his response. Instead, she pulled out the small toolkit she always carried in her jacket pocket, a gift from Mr. Tony, and got to work. The modification took 15 minutes. Riley had to remove the ignition module, fabricate a temporary heat shield from a piece of aluminum flashing she found in a nearby dumpster, and relocate the mounting bracket using zip ties from her toolkit. It wasn't pretty, but it would work. The crowd of drivers had stopped honking. They were watching now, this 12-year-old girl elbow-deep in a Rolls-Royce engine, moving with the kind of confidence that came from understanding exactly what she was doing. Try it now, Riley said, stepping back. The man got into the car and turned the key. The Phantom roared to life. Smooth, perfect, like it had never been broken. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Someone whistled. A woman shouted, "That's my girl!" Riley closed the hood carefully and wiped her hands on her jacket. The heat shield is temporary. You'll need a proper one installed. And the mounting bracket should be stainless steel, not zip ties. But it'll get you where you need to go. The man stepped out of the car, looking at Riley like he was seeing her for the first time. How did you know about the Stirling hybrid system? My dad worked on something like it, Riley said. The words felt heavy in her mouth. He was an engineer, automotive design. She stopped. Couldn't say the rest. Couldn't say died, because saying it made it real all over again. The man's expression shifted. Something that might have been recognition, or shock, or fear. Your father's name? Robert Thompson. Riley said it clearly, proudly. He was the best engineer you've ever seen. The man went pale. Actually pale. The blood drained from his face like someone had pulled a plug. Robert Thompson, he repeated slowly. Yeah. Riley tilted her head. Did you know him? The man didn't answer. Instead, he pulled out his wallet again, this time extracting several $100 bills. For the repair. Thank you. Riley looked at the money but didn't take it. I didn't do it for money. I did it because the car needed fixing, and I knew how. Take it anyway. The man thrust the bills toward her. Riley shook her head. I don't want your money. I want… She stopped. What did she want? Justice? Recognition? For someone to admit that her father had been brilliant before the accident took him. What? The man asked. What do you want? I want you to remember that the kid who fixed your car learned from Robert Thompson, Riley said, and that he was worth remembering. She turned to walk away. Wait, the man called. What's your name? Riley Thompson. She looked back at him. And you are? The man hesitated. Then quietly, Dominic Stirling. Riley's world tilted. Stirling. as in Sterling Automotive Corporation, as in the company her father had worked for before the accident, as in the CEO who'd sent a generic sympathy card to the funeral and nothing else. You, Riley whispered. You're the one who… But Dominic was already getting back into his car. Thank you for the repair, Miss Thompson. I'll have my people send proper compensation. I don't want compensation, Riley's voice cracked. I want you to… The Rolls-Royce pulled away, leaving Riley standing in the middle of Woodward Avenue, hands shaking, the crowd dispersing, everything feeling wrong and right and impossible all at once. She walked home in a daze, barely noticing the streets, the buildings, the people. Her mind kept replaying the moment, the Sterling hybrid system, the way Dominic's face had changed when she said her father's name, the way he'd left without answering her question. Their apartment was small, cramped, on the 3rd floor of a building that should have been condemned years ago. Riley's mom, Sarah, was already home from her first job, cooking dinner before leaving for her night shift at the hospital. Hey baby, Sarah called from the kitchen. How was Tony's? Fine. Riley's voice sounded distant even to herself. Mom, did Dad ever work on something called the Sterling hybrid system? The spoon Sarah was holding clattered into the pot. Where did you hear that name? Sarah's voice was tight, controlled in the way it got when she was trying not to cry. I saw it today, in a car. A Rolls-Royce Phantom owned by Dominic Sterling. Sarah turned off the stove and sat down heavily at their small kitchen table. Riley, sweetheart, sit down. Riley sat. Your father worked at Sterling Automotive for 8 years, Sarah began. He was their lead engineer for hybrid systems. The Sterling hybrid was his project, his design, his innovation. He spent 3 years developing it, testing it, perfecting it. What happened? Riley already knew the answer would hurt. 2 weeks before he was going to patent it under his own name, there was an accident at the factory. Sarah's hands were shaking. A pressure test went wrong. Your father was trying to save his equipment, his prototypes. He was in the building when… She couldn't finish. Riley's throat was tight. They said it was an accident. It was investigated. The company was cleared. But Riley… Sarah looked at her daughter with eyes that held too much pain. 3 months after your father died, Sterling Automotive announced the Sterling hybrid system. They patented it. They've made millions from it. And they never mentioned your father's name. Not once. Riley felt something cold settle in her chest. They stole it. I couldn't prove it. I tried. I hired a lawyer with money we didn't have. But the company owned everything your father created while he worked there. Even though he designed it at home, on his own time, they said it belonged to them. Sarah reached across the table and took Riley's hand. I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. Riley stood up abruptly. I need to see Dad's notebooks. They were in a box in Riley's closet. 14 notebooks filled with her father's handwriting, his designs, his dreams. Riley pulled out number 7 and flipped through it. There it was, the Sterling hybrid system. Every detail, every calculation, every innovation, all in her father's handwriting, dated 2 years before Sterling Automotive had invented it. Mom, Riley said quietly. I think I just fixed Dominic Sterling's car with Dad's stolen invention. Sarah's face went through several emotions. Shock, anger, something that might have been pride. What are you thinking? Sarah asked carefully. Riley looked at her father's notebooks, at the proof that Robert Thompson had been brilliant, that he'd created something revolutionary, that he'd deserved credit and compensation and life. I'm thinking, Riley said, that it's time Dominic Sterling learned who really invented his precious hybrid system. She didn't know how yet, didn't know what a 12-year-old girl could do against a billionaire CEO, but she knew one thing. Her father's legacy wasn't going to be forgotten, and Dominic Sterling was about to discover that Robert Thompson's daughter had inherited more than just his mechanical skills. She'd inherited his refusal to be invisible. The video went viral overnight. Riley didn't know about it until she walked into Tony's auto repair the next morning and found Mr. Tony staring at his phone with an expression she'd never seen before, somewhere between shock and fury. Riley, he said quietly, you need to see this. The video had been posted by someone stuck in traffic. The angle was shaky, shot through a car windshield, but the audio was clear. Riley could hear her own voice. I can fix this. Then Dominic's cruel laugh. Then 15 minutes condensed into 2. showing Riley working under the hood while a crowd gathered. The caption read, "12-year-old girl fixes billionaire's Rolls-Royce after he mocks her. CEO Dominic Sterling should be ashamed." 3 million views. 50,000 comments. "When did this?" Riley started. "Posted last night around 9, Mr. Tony said. "Kid, the whole internet is talking about you." He scrolled through the comments. Most were supportive, angry on Riley's behalf, but some made her stomach turn. "Staged. Publicity stunt for Sterling Automotive. That's not a real kid, it's a paid actor. Even if it's real, she probably broke something. Rich guy was nice to let her try. But then there were others. My daughter is 12. Seeing this girl stand up to that arrogant CEO made her cry. Thank you for showing her girls can do anything. I'm a mechanic. What that kid did in 15 minutes would take me an hour. She's genuinely talented. Dominic Sterling is a known jerk. About time someone put him in his place." Mr. Tony set down his phone. "Riley, I need you to be straight with me. That hybrid system you were talking about last night, the one in your dad's notebooks, that's the Sterling hybrid, isn't it?" Riley nodded, throat tight. "And you think Sterling stole it from your father?" "I know he did." Riley pulled out her phone, showing Mr. Tony photos she'd taken of her father's notebooks. Page after page of detailed schematics, calculations, test results, all dated 2 years before Sterling Automotive had announced the system. Mr. Tony studied the images, his weathered face growing darker with each swipe. He'd been a mechanic for 40 years, had seen every kind of engine design imaginable. He knew what he was looking at. "This is proof," he said finally. "Riley, this is actual, honest-to-God proof that your father invented that system. Mom tried to use it. She hired a lawyer, but lawyers cost money you didn't have, and Sterling has a whole team of them." Mr. Tony's voice was bitter. "That's how guys like him win. Not by being right, but by being able to afford to fight longer than anyone else." He handed Riley's phone back. "But things are different now. You've got the internet's attention. And the internet doesn't like rich guys who steal from dead engineers and mock their kids." As if summoning it, Riley's phone started buzzing. Text messages from numbers she didn't recognize. Emails flooding her inbox. Friend requests on social media she barely used. One email subject line caught her eye. "Detroit Free Press. Interview request. Mr. Tony, reporters are..." "Don't respond to anyone yet," Mr. Tony interrupted. "First, we need to make sure you're protected, that your story is airtight. Because once you start talking publicly, Sterling's lawyers are going to come after you with everything they have." "I'm not scared of lawyers." "You should be, kid." Mr. Tony's voice was gentle but firm. "They'll say you're lying, that you fabricated those notebooks, that your mom is using you to extort money. They'll make you look like the bad guy." Riley felt something cold settle in her stomach. "So what do I do?" "You get your own expert. Someone who can verify your father's work, independently." Mr. Tony pulled out his phone and made a call. "Jimmy, it's Tony Russo." "Yeah, from Detroit. Listen, I need a favor." 20 minutes later, Riley was on her way to Wayne State University with Mr. Tony, carrying her father's notebooks in a backpack that suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Professor James Chen met them in his office, a cramped space overflowing with textbooks, engine parts, and whiteboards covered in equations. He was in his 50s, with tired eyes that lit up when Mr. Tony explained why they'd come. "Robert Thompson's daughter," Professor Chen said, studying Riley. "I knew your father. Not well, but we presented at the same engineering conference 5 years ago. He was brilliant." "Did you know about the Sterling hybrid?" Riley asked. "Everyone in automotive engineering knows about it. It's revolutionary. Improved efficiency without sacrificing power. Sterling Automotive has made millions licensing it to other manufacturers." Professor Chen's expression darkened. "But I always wondered about the timing. Robert presents a theoretical framework at a conference, dies in an accident, and 6 months later Sterling announces a system that's remarkably similar to Robert's presentation. Too similar." Riley pulled out the notebooks. "These are his. All his work on the hybrid system. Dated, detailed, everything." Professor Chen spent the next hour studying the notebooks. He didn't just skim. He read every page, checked every calculation, compared diagrams to known specifications of the Sterling hybrid. His expression grew more troubled with each page. Finally, he looked up at Riley. "This is unquestionable. Your father designed the Sterling hybrid system. Every major innovation, every efficiency improvement, it's all here in his handwriting, dated months before Sterling filed their patent. Can you testify to that?" Mr. Tony asked. "Absolutely. But Riley, you need to understand what you're up against." Professor Chen's voice was serious. "Sterling Automotive is worth billions. They've built their reputation on this technology. If you prove they stole it, you're not just taking money from them. You're destroying their credibility, potentially opening them up to lawsuits from every company they've licensed the technology to." "Good," Riley said firmly. "They deserve it. Maybe so. But they won't go down without a fight. You need legal representation. Real legal representation, not a public defender or a small-time lawyer. You need someone who can stand up to Sterling's legal team." Riley's phone buzzed again. Another email. This one from a law firm. "Morrison and Associates, pro bono representation offer." She opened it, hardly daring to hope. "Ms. Thompson, we saw the video of you repairing Mr. Sterling's vehicle. We've also been made aware of your father's stolen intellectual property. Our firm specializes in corporate theft cases, and we'd like to offer our services pro bono. If your father's notebooks contain what we believe they do, this case could set a precedent for protecting individual inventors' rights against corporate theft." "Mr. Tony," Riley said, her voice shaking, "I think I just got a lawyer." By the time they left the university, the video had 5 million views. News outlets were picking up the story. "Girl genius fixes billionaire's car" was trending on 3 platforms, and Dominic Sterling had released a statement. Riley read it on her phone as Mr. Tony drove her home. "Yesterday, I had the pleasure of meeting a talented young person who helped with a minor vehicle issue. While I appreciate her enthusiasm, I want to clarify that the repair was temporary and required professional attention afterward. I've sent a donation to her local school's STEM program as a thank you. I wish her well in her future endeavors." Riley felt rage building in her chest. "He's making it sound like I'm just some cute kid who helped him out, like it was nothing." "Of course he is," Mr. Tony said. "He's trying to control the narrative before you can, making himself look generous. You look like a charity case he's helping. It's classic PR damage control. What do I do? You tell the truth. Your father's truth." Mr. Tony pulled up to Riley's apartment building. "And you do it before he can bury it under lawyers and corporate spin." Riley climbed out of the truck, but Mr. Tony called her back. "Kid, one more thing. Your father used to come into my shop sometimes years ago, before he made it big at Sterling. He'd talk about his daughter, about how you'd sit in the garage with him for hours just watching him work. He said you had a gift, that you understood engines the way some people understand music." Mr. Tony's voice was thick with emotion. "He'd be so proud of you right now. Not because you fixed a fancy car, but because you're fighting for what's right. That's the real inheritance he left you. Not just mechanical skills, but the courage to stand up when something's wrong." Riley nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Inside the apartment, her mom was waiting. Sarah had clearly been crying, her phone in her hand showing the video that was reshaping their lives. "Riley, baby, we need to talk about this," Sarah started. "Mom, I got a lawyer, a real one, pro bono, and a professor who'll testify that Dad invented the Sterling hybrid." The words came out in a rush. "We can prove it. We can make them admit what they did." "Sweetheart, I've been down this road. I tried." "You tried alone, with no money and no attention," Riley interrupted. "But Mom, 5 million people have watched me embarrass Dominic Sterling. The internet is on our side. Reporters want to talk to me. We're not alone anymore." Sarah pulled Riley into a tight hug. "I'm scared. These people are powerful. They could hurt us." "They already did," Riley said into her mother's shoulder. "They took Dad. They took his work. They took credit for his genius. How much more can they hurt us?" Sarah held her daughter tighter, and Riley felt her mother's tears on her neck. "Okay," Sarah whispered. "Okay, we fight, but we do it smart. We don't talk to anyone until we talk to that lawyer. We don't make any statements until we're sure we can back them up. Deal?" "Deal." That night, Riley couldn't sleep. She kept checking her phone, watching the view count climb. 6 million. 7 million. People sharing their own stories of being dismissed, mocked, underestimated because of their age or background or appearance. At midnight, she got a text from an unknown number. "This is Claire Morgan, VP of Engineering at Sterling Automotive. We need to talk. What happened to your father was wrong. I have information that could help you, but we can't do this publicly. Can we meet?" Riley stared at the message for a long time. Then she took a screenshot and forwarded it to the lawyer from Morrison and Associates. Within minutes, she got a response. "Do not respond. Do not meet with anyone from Sterling without legal counsel present. They're trying to get ahead of this. Let them worry. Your father's notebooks are our evidence. Their desperation is our confirmation that they know you're right. Stay quiet. Stay strong. We move forward together." Riley set down her phone and pulled out notebook number 7, the one with the most detailed schematics of the Sterling hybrid system. Her father's handwriting filled the pages. Neat, precise, brilliant. "I'm going to make them say your name, Dad," Riley whispered to the empty room. "I'm going to make sure everyone knows you invented this, I promise." Outside her window, Detroit slept. But across the city, in a penthouse office, Dominic Sterling was awake too, and he was afraid. The lawyer's office was nothing like Riley had imagined. She'd expected intimidating wood paneling and leather chairs, but Morrison and Associates occupied a renovated warehouse in Midtown Detroit with exposed brick walls and floor-to-ceiling windows. The lead attorney, Patricia Morrison, was in her 50s with silver hair and kind eyes that reminded Riley of Mr. Tony. "You must be Riley," Patricia said, extending her hand. "And you're Sarah. Thank you for coming." Riley sat between her mother and Mr. Tony, who'd insisted on coming for moral support. Tyler, her 9-year-old brother, sat on Sarah's other side, swinging his legs and trying to look anywhere but at the adults talking about their dead father. Riley had almost forgotten about Tyler in the chaos of the past day. He'd been staying with Mrs. Chen, their neighbor, while Sarah worked double shifts. Now he was here, quiet and watchful. Too young to fully understand, but old enough to know something important was happening. "Before we discuss strategy," Patricia began, "I need to verify what we're working with. Professor Chen sent over his analysis of your father's notebooks. Riley, these are extraordinary. The level of detail, the innovation. Your father was genuinely brilliant." "We know," Tyler said suddenly. Everyone looked at him. Dad was the smartest person ever. He could fix anything. Patricia's expression softened. "I'm sure he was. And I'm going to make sure everyone knows what he created." She turned to Sarah. "Mrs. Thompson, I've reviewed the case you tried to bring 3 years ago. You were right to pursue it, but you were outgunned. Sterling's legal team buried you in motions and delays until you ran out of money." "I couldn't keep fighting," Sarah said quietly. "I had 2 kids to feed. I understand, but things are different now. The viral video has created public pressure Sterling can't ignore, and your daughter's demonstration of skill," Patricia smiled at Riley, "proves she inherited Robert's genius. That's powerful." "What's the plan?" Mr. Tony asked. Patricia pulled out a folder. "We're filing 2 lawsuits. First, intellectual property theft. Robert's notebooks prove he invented the Sterling hybrid system while working at Sterling Automotive, but on his own time using personal resources. Under Michigan law, that means the invention belongs to his estate, to his family." "Second lawsuit?" Sarah asked. "Wrongful death." Patricia's voice was gentle but firm. "The accident that killed Robert happened during a pressure test of his hybrid system prototype. Sterling's own safety reports show multiple violations. They were pushing too hard, too fast, trying to get the system to market. Robert died trying to save his equipment because the company hadn't provided adequate safety protocols." Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. "I didn't know. They said it was just an accident. Equipment failure. It was equipment failure caused by negligence. The company was fined, but that was handled quietly. No publicity, no accountability." Patricia looked at Riley and Tyler. "Your father's death was preventable. Sterling chose profit over safety, and Robert paid the price." Riley felt something hot and sharp in her chest. Not just grief anymore, anger. They killed him and then stole his invention? Legally, we can't prove they killed him intentionally, but we can prove negligence, and we can prove theft. Patricia opened her laptop. "Now, about Claire Morgan, the VP who texted you. You said not to respond," Riley reminded her. "Correct. But I did some research on Dr. Morgan. She's been with Sterling Automotive for 15 years. She was the lead engineer under your father, Riley. They worked together closely on the hybrid system. So she knows it's Dad's invention, Riley said. More than that, I think she feels guilty. Patricia showed them an internal email she'd obtained through discovery requests. This was sent by Claire Morgan to Dominic Sterling 6 months after your father died. She writes, "We cannot in good conscience patent the hybrid system as company IP. Robert Thompson designed this system. His family deserves recognition and compensation." "What did Sterling say?" Sarah asked. He replied, "The matter is closed. Robert was an employee. All his work belongs to Sterling Automotive per his contract. Do not raise this issue again." Patricia closed the laptop. Claire Morgan has stayed silent for over a year, but I think the viral video shook her. She sees a 12-year-old girl fighting the same battle she lost. My guess? She wants to help, but she's terrified of losing her job. "Can we trust her?" Mr. Tony asked. "Not yet, but if she's willing to testify about the system's true origins, she'd be our most powerful witness, an insider with direct knowledge." Patricia looked at Riley. "Would you be willing to meet with her?" "With me present, of course." Riley thought about it. About her father working late nights, teaching her about engines, believing that innovation and hard work mattered. About Claire Morgan, who'd known the truth and stayed silent. "Only if she admits what Sterling did was wrong," Riley said. "Out loud, on record. I don't want her trying to make excuses." "Fair enough." Patricia made a note. "Now, there's something else you need to know. The video has reached 15 million views. News outlets are calling it the biggest David versus Goliath story of the year. Tomorrow, Channel 7 wants to do a live interview with you, Riley. In studio. Your mother would be there, of course. Live TV?" Riley's stomach clenched. "You don't have to do it," Sarah said quickly. "Honey, you've done enough. We can let the lawyers handle it from here." But Patricia shook her head. "With respect, Mrs. Thompson, Riley's voice is your strongest weapon. She's sympathetic, clearly brilliant, and she represents everything Sterling destroyed. A daughter who lost her father to corporate greed. If she tells her story on live television with her father's notebooks as proof, public pressure will force Sterling to settle. Or they'll destroy her," Sarah said. "Drag her through the mud, say she's lying, make her look like a gold digger using her dead father for money." "They'll try," Patricia agreed, "but they'll fail, because Riley isn't lying. Every word she says can be backed up with documentation. And trying to discredit a 12-year-old girl on national television, that's a PR nightmare Sterling can't afford." Riley looked at Tyler, who was watching her with big eyes. "What do you think, Ty?" "I think Dad would want people to know he made that thing," Tyler said. "The hybrid car thing. He was always talking about it, about how it would help the planet. He'd want people to know it was his." Riley felt tears prick her eyes. Tyler had been only 7 when their father died, but he remembered. He carried those memories like Riley carried her father's tools. "Okay," Riley said. "I'll do the interview." The next morning, Riley stood outside the Channel 7 studios with her mother, wearing the nicest clothes they owned, which still weren't very nice. Sarah had tried to tame Riley's hair, but grease stains under her fingernails were permanent. "You look perfect," Sarah said, though her voice shook. "I look like a kid from the East Side. You look like Robert Thompson's daughter. That's all that matters." Inside, the studio was chaos. Producers rushing around, cameras being positioned, someone applying makeup to Riley's face despite her protests. The interviewer, Marcus Webb, was a local news anchor known for tough questions and zero patience for corporate spin. "Riley," Marcus said, shaking her hand, "I've been following your story. Your father was a remarkable man. You knew him. I interviewed him once, about 5 years ago. He was presenting at an engineering conference, talked for 20 minutes about sustainable automotive design. I didn't understand half of it, but his passion was infectious." Marcus smiled sadly. "I'm sorry for your loss, and I'm sorry it took a viral video for people to pay attention to what happened to him." The interview went live at noon. Marcus started with the basics, how old Riley was, where she learned mechanics. Then he showed the viral video, and Riley watched herself on the studio monitors, small, determined, covered in grease, telling Dominic Sterling, "I can fix this." "That moment," Marcus said, When you identified the Sterling hybrid system in his car, talk me through what you felt. Riley took a breath. Confused at first, because I recognized the design from my dad's notebooks, but I didn't understand why it was in Mr. Sterling's car. Then I remembered, her voice cracked, that Sterling Automotive claimed they invented it, but my dad designed that system, every component, every innovation. It was his. You have proof of this? Riley held up notebook number 7. 14 notebooks full of my father's designs, all dated before Sterling Automotive filed their patent. Professor James Chen from Wayne State University verified them. Every major innovation in the Sterling hybrid system is documented here in my father's handwriting. Marcus looked directly at the camera. We've confirmed independently that these notebooks are authentic. The dates check out. The technical specifications match the patented Sterling hybrid system exactly. We reached out to Sterling Automotive for comment. He played a clip of Dominic Sterling from that morning. We have great respect for Robert Thompson and his contributions to our company. However, all intellectual property developed by our employees belongs to Sterling Automotive per their employment contracts. Mr. Thompson was a valued team member and we honor his memory. Valued team member, Riley repeated, her voice sharp. My dad died in an accident at their facility. A pressure test that went wrong because they were rushing, cutting corners, ignoring safety protocols. He died trying to save his equipment, his prototypes. And 3 months later, they patented his invention without even mentioning his name. That's a serious accusation, Marcus said. It's the truth. We have safety reports showing violations. We have my dad's emails warning about the dangers. We have everything. Riley looked directly into the camera, imagining Dominic Sterling watching. My dad believed that hard work and innovation mattered, that if you created something brilliant, you'd get credit for it. He was wrong, because Sterling Automotive took his work, took his life, and then pretended he never existed. Her voice broke on the last word. Sarah reached over and squeezed her hand. What do you want? Marcus asked gently. What outcome are you hoping for? I want my dad's name on that patent. I want everyone who buys a car with the Sterling hybrid system to know that Robert Thompson invented it. I want Sterling Automotive to admit what they did. Riley paused. And I want them to create a safety foundation in my dad's name, so no other engineer dies because a company cares more about deadlines than people. And financially, the Sterling hybrid system has generated millions in licensing fees. Whatever the court decides is fair for my dad's work, we'll accept. But this isn't about money. It's about making sure my dad isn't forgotten, that his 9-year-old son, her voice cracked again, grows up knowing his father was brilliant and deserves to be remembered. The interview lasted 30 minutes. By the time it ended, Riley was exhausted, wrung out, but also lighter somehow. She'd said everything she needed to say. In the green room afterward, Patricia was waiting with her laptop. You need to see this. Sterling Automotive's stock had dropped 12%. Social media was exploding. Justice for Robert Thompson was trending worldwide. And Dominic Sterling had released another statement. In light of recent information, Sterling Automotive is conducting an internal review of the Sterling hybrid systems development. We remain committed to honoring all contributors to our innovations. That's not an admission, Sarah said. No, but it's panic, Patricia replied. He's trying to get ahead of this before it destroys him, which means he's ready to negotiate. Riley's phone buzzed. A text from the number that had messaged before. Claire Morgan. I'm sorry I stayed silent so long. What they did to your father was unforgivable. I have documents, emails, meeting notes, safety reports that prove everything you said. I'm ready to testify. Not because the video shamed me, but because you deserve to know. Your father was the best engineer I ever worked with, and he died because Dominic Sterling cared more about profits than people. I'll help you prove it. Claire. Riley showed the message to Patricia, who read it and nodded slowly. This is it. This is what breaks the case wide open. An insider willing to testify. Patricia looked at Riley with something like awe. Do you understand what you've done? In 3 days, you've accomplished what your mother couldn't in 3 years. You forced Sterling to the table. I just told the truth, Riley said. That's exactly why it worked. That night at home, Riley sat with Tyler on their shared mattress. They couldn't afford separate beds, and showed him their father's notebook. See this? She pointed to a schematic. This is the engine design that's in thousands of cars now. Dad drew this. Dad invented this. Will people know? Tyler asked. Will they say his name? Yeah, Ty. They'll say his name. I promise. Tyler was quiet for a moment. Then, I'm glad you're my sister. You're brave like Dad was. Riley felt tears sting her eyes. She pulled her little brother close. Dad was brave because he cared about doing the right thing even when it was hard. I'm just trying to do what he taught us. You're doing good, Tyler said with the simple certainty of a 9-year-old. Dad would be proud. Across the city, in his penthouse office, Dominic Sterling watched Riley's interview for the 3rd time. His lawyers had told him to settle. His board had told him to settle. His wife had told him to settle. But settling meant admitting he'd stolen Robert Thompson's invention. It meant publicly acknowledging that a dead engineer had been smarter than Sterling Automotive's entire research department. It meant putting Robert's name on every patent, every license, every car. It meant losing. Dominic picked up his phone and called Patricia Morrison. I want to meet with the girl, he said. Face to face. No lawyers. Just me and her. Absolutely not, Patricia replied. My client is 12 years old. You don't get unsupervised access to her. Then you can be there. But I need to talk to Riley Thompson. I need to explain. He stopped. What did he need to explain? That he'd made a mistake? That he was sorry? You need to what, Mr. Sterling? I need to apologize, Dominic said quietly. To her, to her mother, to her brother, to Robert's memory. I need to say I'm sorry. Patricia was silent for a moment. I'll ask them. But Mr. Sterling, if this is a PR stunt, if you're trying to manipulate a child for optics, I will end you. It's not a stunt, Dominic said. I saw her on TV, saw her talking about her father, and I realized I don't even remember Robert Thompson's face. I signed off on his safety reports. I approved the pressure test that killed him. I patented his invention, and I don't remember what he looked like. Then maybe, Patricia said coldly, it's time you learned. She hung up. Dominic sat in the dark, looking at the city lights, wondering when exactly he'd become the villain in someone else's story, and whether it was too late to become something else. The meeting happened 3 days later, in Patricia Morrison's conference room. Dominic Sterling arrived without his lawyers, without his assistant, without the armor of wealth that usually surrounded him. He wore a simple suit and carried a folder that looked worn, like he'd been holding it for days. Riley sat across from him, flanked by her mother and Patricia. Mr. Tony stood by the door like a guardian. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioning and Riley's heart pounding in her ears. Thank you for agreeing to see me, Dominic said. His voice was different from the condescending tone Riley remembered. Quieter, almost broken. You have 10 minutes, Patricia said firmly. Then we proceed with litigation. Dominic nodded. He opened the folder and pulled out a photograph, sliding it across the table to Riley. It was her father. Younger, maybe 30, standing in front of an engine prototype, grinning at the camera with grease on his hands and joy in his eyes. I found this in our archives, Dominic said. From 7 years ago, the day your father first proposed the hybrid system concept to our engineering team. I wasn't there for the presentation. I was too busy with a merger deal, too important to attend an engineer's pitch meeting. Riley touched the photo with trembling fingers. She'd never seen this picture. Her father looked so alive, so full of hope. He was brilliant that day, Dominic continued. According to the notes, he talked for 2 hours about sustainable design, about reducing emissions without sacrificing performance. Claire Morgan said she'd never seen someone so passionate about making the world better through engineering. Why are you telling me this? Riley asked. Because you asked me to remember him, and I didn't. I couldn't even picture his face when you said his name on Woodward Avenue. Dominic's voice cracked. I've spent the last week going through everything. Every email he sent, every safety report, every warning he gave us about the pressure test. He pulled out more documents. Safety reports marked urgent in her father's handwriting. Emails warning about equipment stress. Requests for more time, more testing, better protocols. All ignored. Your father died because I pushed too hard, Dominic said. We had investors breathing down our necks, competitors getting close to similar technology. I approved the pressure test even though Robert said we weren't ready. I told him to make it work because we couldn't afford delays. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. You knew it was dangerous. He told me it was dangerous. I didn't listen. I thought, Dominic's face was gray now, aged beyond his years. I thought engineers were always overly cautious, that Robert was being dramatic. So I overruled his objections and ordered the test anyway. You killed him, Riley said. The words came out flat, emotionless, because if she let herself feel them, she'd shatter. Yes, Dominic didn't flinch from it. Not intentionally, but my negligence, my arrogance, my refusal to listen to the expert I'd hired, it killed him. And then, after he died, I let my legal team bury the safety violations. I let them rewrite the narrative so Sterling Automotive looked blameless. And when Claire begged me to credit Robert for the hybrid system, I told her to keep quiet. He looked directly at Riley. I stole your father's invention. I profited from his death. And I did it because it was easier than admitting I'd made a mistake. The room was silent. Even Patricia looked stunned. Why are you confessing this? Riley asked. Your lawyers must be having a heart attack right now. They are, Dominic agreed. They told me this meeting was corporate suicide, that I was handing you everything you'd need to destroy Sterling Automotive. He pulled out another document. But I don't care anymore. I watched your interview. I saw you, 12 years old, holding your father's notebooks, fighting for his legacy. And I realized I'd become exactly the kind of person I despised when I started this company. He slid the document across the table. It was a settlement agreement. Patricia picked it up, her eyes widening as she read. This is everything you asked for, Dominic said. Robert Thompson's name on every patent. Full retroactive credit for the Sterling hybrid system. $30 million in compensation for the stolen intellectual property, plus $10 million for wrongful death. And a foundation in Robert's name with an endowment of $50 million to improve automotive safety standards. Sarah made a sound like she'd been punched. Additionally, Dominic continued, I'm stepping down as CEO. The board will announce it tomorrow. Claire Morgan will take over as interim CEO until they find a permanent replacement. She's the only person who fought for Robert. She deserves to lead the company he helped build. You're giving up everything, Riley said. No, I'm finally doing the right thing. Dominic looked at the photograph of Robert. Your father loved his work, loved engineering, loved the idea that he could make cars cleaner, better, safer. He died because I cared more about deadlines than I cared about the man doing the work. That's unforgivable. Then why should we forgive you? Riley asked. Her voice shook but stayed strong. You shouldn't. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for the chance to make sure what happened to your father never happens to anyone else. Dominic pulled out one more document. This is a pledge to the Robert Thompson Safety Foundation. Sterling Automotive will dedicate 20% of all hybrid system profits to funding safety research, whistleblower protections, and family support for engineers killed in industrial accidents. He looked at Tyler, who'd been silent through the whole meeting. Your father was a hero. Not because he invented something brilliant, but because he tried to do the right thing even when it cost him everything. I want to make sure everyone knows that. Tyler's eyes filled with tears. Do you remember him now? What he looked like? Yeah, kid. I remember him. Dominic's voice was thick, and I'll never forget him again. Patricia reviewed the settlement documents with rapid efficiency. This is legally binding. Once signed, Sterling Automotive admits fault, pays the settlement, and establishes the foundation. Mr. Sterling, you understand you're opening yourself up to shareholder lawsuits, potential criminal negligence charges, and complete professional destruction? I understand. Why? Patricia asked. Why confess everything when you could fight this for years? Dominic looked at Riley. Because she walked up to my broken car and said, I can fix this. And she did. A 12-year-old girl fixed something my $300 an hour mechanic couldn't. Fixed it with zip ties and scrap metal, and her father's knowledge. He smiled sadly. She reminded me that the best engineering doesn't come from money or status. It comes from people who care enough to learn, to try, to fix what's broken. Her father was one of those people, and I destroyed him. He stood up. I can't bring Robert back, can't give you more time with him. But I can make sure his legacy lives on in every car that uses his technology, every safety standard that bears his name, every engineer who's protected by the foundation he inspired. Dominic extended his hand to Riley. I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. For everything. Riley looked at his hand. This man had stolen from her family, lied to them, profited from her father's death. He deserved her hatred. But Riley thought about her father, about the way he'd always believed people could be better, could learn, could change. She shook Dominic's hand. My dad would have wanted the foundation. He cared about keeping people safe. So I accept your settlement. But Mr. Sterling, you don't get to forget this. Every time someone mentions the Sterling hybrid system, you remember it's the Robert Thompson hybrid system. Every time you see a car using that technology, you remember the man who died creating it. I will, Dominic promised. Every single day. After he left, Sarah pulled Riley into a fierce hug. Your father would be so proud of you. I just wanted people to know his name, Riley said into her mother's shoulder. They will, baby. The whole world will know. That night, the settlement was announced publicly. News outlets exploded. Sterling CEO admits theft and negligence. Girl mechanic wins justice for father. 12-year-old brings down billionaire. But Riley didn't care about the headlines. She cared about the statement Sterling Automotive released. Robert Thompson was a brilliant engineer whose innovation created the Sterling hybrid system. We failed him in life and dishonored him in death. We are committed to ensuring his legacy lives on through the Robert Thompson Safety Foundation and by properly crediting his work. We are profoundly sorry. Riley read it to Tyler that night, curled up on their shared mattress. Does this mean we're rich now? Tyler asked. It means we're okay, Riley corrected. It means you can go to college. It means Mom doesn't have to work 2 jobs. It means Dad's name is on his invention. That's better than being rich, Tyler decided.
2 weeks later, Riley stood in Tony's auto repair, teaching a class of 6 kids from the neighborhood how to change oil. The settlement money had allowed Mr. Tony to expand, to create a youth mechanics program in Robert Thompson's name. The oil filter is here, Riley explained, pointing. You turn it counterclockwise, like this.
The kids watched with the same wide-eyed attention Riley had given her father years ago. Learning, growing, discovering that they could fix things. Mr. Tony watched from the doorway, his eyes wet. Your dad would love this kid. I know, Riley said. That's why we're doing it. Her phone buzzed. A message from Claire Morgan, now CEO of Sterling Automotive. First production run of the Robert Thompson hybrid system just rolled off the assembly line. Your father's name is on every engine. Sending you the first one. It's yours. Claire. Riley smiled. Then she went back to teaching, to passing on her father's knowledge, to making sure his legacy wasn't just in engines and patents. It was in every kid who learned that being small didn't mean being powerless, that being young didn't mean being voiceless, that fixing what's broken, whether it's a car or justice itself, always started with someone brave enough to say, I can fix this. 1 year later, Riley stood on the stage of the Detroit Auto Show, the largest automotive expo in North America. She was 13 now, taller but still small for her age, still with grease permanently stained under her fingernails. The auditorium held 3,000 people, engineers, journalists, industry executives, students, all of them waiting to hear her speak. Behind her on a massive screen was a photograph of her father. Young, brilliant, covered in grease, grinning at the camera like he'd just solved the world's biggest puzzle. My dad used to say that fixing things is about more than understanding how they work, Riley began, her voice steady despite the ocean of faces. It's about caring enough to try. About refusing to walk past something broken and pretend you don't see it. She clicked to the next slide. The viral video of her fixing Dominic's Rolls-Royce, condensed to 30 seconds. The crowd murmured recognition. Most of them had seen it, had shared it, had been part of the movement it created. A year ago I saw a broken car. I could have walked past, could have told myself it wasn't my problem, that a kid like me didn't belong anywhere near a vehicle worth $500,000. Riley paused. But my father taught me that talent doesn't care about age or money or where you come from. It only cares if you're brave enough to use it. The screen changed again. Robert Thompson's original sketches of the hybrid system, his handwriting filling every margin with calculations and dreams. The Robert Thompson hybrid system isn't just an invention. It's proof that innovation comes from people who care, who work late nights because they believe in making the world better, who sacrifice everything for an idea they know is right. Riley's voice grew stronger. My father died protecting that idea, and for a while, the world forgot he existed. She looked directly at the section where she knew Dominic Sterling was sitting. He'd insisted on attending, on being present when Robert's legacy was honored. But something amazing happened when people remembered, when they saw what had been stolen and decided it mattered. Riley clicked to the next slide. Headlines from the past year. Justice for Robert Thompson. Girl mechanic changes industry standards. Sterling Foundation saves lives. The Robert Thompson Safety Foundation has implemented new protocols at 43 automotive plants across North America, Riley continued. 0 deaths in the past year. 0 preventable accidents, because people finally started listening to engineers instead of just pushing them to work faster, cheaper, with less regard for safety. The crowd erupted in applause. Riley waited for it to quiet. But the foundation is just the beginning. My dad's hybrid system is now in 2 million vehicles worldwide. Every single one carries a plaque that says, "Designed by Robert Thompson, engineer and father." Not just engineer, father. Because he wasn't just the person who invented this technology. He was the person who taught me that fixing things starts with seeing what's broken. Riley clicked to the final slide. It was Tyler, now 10 years old, working under the hood of a car at Tony's Auto Repair. Tongue stuck out in concentration, tools in small hands, learning the same way Riley had learned from their father. This is my brother, Tyler. He's learning to be a mechanic. Not because we need him to work. The settlement from Sterling Automotive means he'll never have to worry about money. He's learning because our father taught us that using your hands to fix things, to build things, to make things work, that's not just a job. It's a way of seeing the world, a way of believing that broken things can be repaired if someone cares enough to try. The emotion in the room was thick enough to touch. Riley could see people wiping their eyes, hear the silence that meant everyone was listening with their whole hearts. 3 months ago, I started the Robert Thompson Youth Mechanics Program. We teach kids from low-income neighborhoods, kids like me, how engines work, how to diagnose problems, how to fix what's broken. We've trained 200 students so far. 12 of them have already earned scholarships to engineering schools. She paused, looking out at the sea of faces. My father believed that knowledge should be shared, not hoarded. That innovation belongs to everyone, not just people who can afford expensive educations. The youth program is his legacy living on, not just in hybrid engines, but in every kid who learns that being poor doesn't mean being powerless. Claire Morgan, now Sterling Automotive's CEO, stood and began applauding. Within seconds, the entire auditorium was on its feet. Standing ovation that lasted 3 full minutes. When the noise finally died down, Riley pulled out something from her pocket. Her father's old multi-tool, worn smooth from years of use. Dad carried this every day. Used it to fix everything from cars to toasters to my brother's broken toys. Riley held it up so the cameras could see. The week before he died, he gave it to me. Said I was ready to start fixing things on my own. I didn't understand what he meant. I thought he was just talking about engines. Her voice cracked, but she pushed through. But he wasn't. He was teaching me that fixing things, really fixing them, means not accepting broken systems, broken promises, broken justice. It means being brave enough to say, "This is wrong," even when everyone tells you to stay quiet. It means using whatever tools you have, even if it's just zip ties and scrap metal and the truth, to make things right. Riley looked directly at the camera, broadcasting this speech to millions. A year ago, I was just a kid who fixed a car. But that moment changed everything, because people decided it mattered. They decided that a 12-year-old girl standing up to a billionaire was a story worth caring about. That a dead engineer's stolen invention was a wrong worth righting. She clicked to a new slide. The Robert Thompson Memorial Wall at Sterling Automotive Headquarters, a massive installation showing every engineer who'd contributed to automotive innovation, with Robert's name and photo prominently featured. My father's name is on that wall, on patents, on engines, on the foundation that saved lives. But more than that, Riley's voice grew fierce. His name is in every conversation about protecting workers, crediting inventors, choosing people over profits. He changed the industry, not just with his invention, but with his death. Because people finally understood that behind every innovation is a human being who deserves to be valued, protected, remembered. The screen changed one last time. A new photograph, Riley, Tyler, and their mother at the grand opening of the Robert Thompson Innovation Center, a state-of-the-art facility where underprivileged students could learn engineering for free. My mom doesn't work 2 jobs anymore. Tyler goes to a good school. We have a house with separate bedrooms and a garage where I can work on engines. The settlement money changed our lives. Riley smiled through tears. But you know what changed them more? Watching the world decide my father mattered. Watching strangers fight for justice they'd never benefit from. Watching people share our story because they believed in the principle that talent deserves recognition, that hard work deserves credit, that fathers deserve to be remembered by their children. She looked at Dominic Sterling, who was openly crying now. They'd had coffee together last month, an unlikely friendship built on shared commitment to Robert's legacy. Dominic had told her he thought about Robert every single day, that he'd learned more about integrity from a dead engineer than from his entire business career. To everyone watching, you have a choice. When you see something broken, whether it's a car or a system or justice itself, you can walk past, or you can stop and say those 3 words that change everything. Riley held up her father's multi-tool one last time. I can fix this. The crowd stood again, applauding until their hands hurt. That evening, Riley returned to Tony's auto repair. The youth program class was in session. 15 kids, ages 8 to 16, learning how to diagnose engine problems. The carburetor connects here, Riley explained, pointing. You feel that? That's air mixing with fuel. That's what makes the engine run. A little girl, maybe 9 years old, looked up with wonder. How did you learn all this? My dad taught me, the same way I'm teaching you. Riley smiled. He used to say that fixing things is the most important skill anyone can learn. Not just cars, anything that's broken. You see the problem, you understand how it's supposed to work, and you find a way to make it right. Even if you're just a kid, the girl asked. Especially if you're just a kid, Riley said. Because kids haven't learned yet that some things are impossible. We still believe we can fix anything if we care enough to try. Mr. Tony watched from his office, tears streaming down his weathered face. Riley had kept every promise. The youth program thrived. Robert's name was everywhere. And most importantly, his daughter had become exactly what he'd always believed she could be. Someone who made the world better by refusing to accept broken things. Outside, the first snow of winter was falling on Detroit. Inside Tony's auto repair, 15 kids were learning that grease-stained hands and second-hand tools could change the world, because Riley Thompson had proven something her father had always known, that fixing what's broken starts with someone brave enough to believe it's possible, that talent doesn't need permission from the powerful, that a 12-year-old girl with zip ties and determination can bring down empires built on lies, and that the 3 most powerful words in any language are simple, honest, and true. I can fix this.